The only problem with that is that they, why didn't you explain to them that their authority ended at the threshold?
I wasn't there. My wife.
No, that's fine. That's fine that your wife was there. Okay. Let me put it this way: not just their authority to be in your house, and they were invited in. What makes them think? What I'm trying to say to you folks: what makes you think that their code applies within somebody else's domestic authority? Okay, let me put it this way: when Hillary Clinton said we can't go into Syria because we can't interfere with their domestic authority or the domestic policy, it doesn't just pertain to a country. A domestic can be a country, like right out of this dictionary flat out says, domestic pertaining to a nation, considered as a family, or to one's own country, not foreign, as domestic troubles or domestic dissensions. See, domestic can be made in one's own house, nation, or country. Okay? So domestic doesn't just mean your house. Domestic means country or nation. Now that's what I try to explain to people. That's why the cops have the ability to touch you and drag you down to the ground, because they have domestic authority over you. So, like I said, when I explain to people domestic authority, I'll just copy and paste this and put it on the website, on this chat for a few folks. But you go to Black's Law Dictionary back in 2004, 1884, not before slavery, not before women's rights, 2004. Domestic authority, this is why the cops can touch you. This is why you can touch anybody in your house. This is why you can do whatever you want in your house with that, and nobody can interfere with your domestic authority, just like we can't interfere with Syria's, even if they're nerve gassing their people. We don't have the capacity to generate policy for under somebody else's domestic affairs. That's what she said. Believe me, it's true. Domestic authority is the legal power to use non-deadly force when reasonably necessary to protect a person from whom one is responsible. 2, the defense that allows you to say in court that a person reasonably responsible for another, such as a parent responsible for a child, can use non-deadly force when reasonably necessary to protect that person being cared for. And then, like I said, I'm just going to put it in there what page you find it on. And you can go to Karl's jurisdiction under assault and battery. And I'll actually put a case up in there for you if you really, folks really care. But domestic affairs, they don't have the right to go into your home. They have no right to do any of this stuff that you think they do. Even if you invite them in. Say you invited Hillary Clinton into Syria. Does that mean now she could tell Syria what to do just because she went there? And she said, well, I got the power of the United States behind me. Yeah, well, that's just lovely. So what? You know, what does that have to do with your ability to tell us what we can and cannot do? We're not under our domestic control, under our domestic authority. What makes you think that your domestic policies have anything to do with my domestic policies? Just because that's your code that you people run under in your nation or your country, in your house, what makes you think that your rules, your codes pertain to me, in my house? See, so this is what I try to say to you folks, man, to try to get away from them saying, well, you know, they say they can go in your house, and when they go in your house, well, you know, you open the door, and what are you talking about? You're saying just because Hillary Clinton can sneak a whole bunch of Marines into Syria, that gives her the right to do whatever she wants? No, that's ridiculous. You know, when they cross that threshold, they're outside of their authority. Now, the only way I explain to people sometimes is if you're a U.S. citizen, for a lot of people it's good to be a U.S. citizen at times, and sometimes it's not. I explain it on the video, like you watch on all these movies with Vietnam when they're flying the guys out of Saigon. You see somebody knocking on that U.S. Embassy gate, he says he's Canadian. They'll say, oh, the Canadian Embassy? Well, that's about 50 miles that way. They'll say, what? 50 miles? Yeah, wait a second, they've been overtaken an hour ago. Well, there's nothing we can do for you, Mr. Canadian. There's nothing we can do for you, Mr. Australian. All we do is we take in U.S. citizens and save their lives. I guess you're going to have to die. Goodbye. So sometimes it's good to have a U.S. citizen passport, a U.S. citizenship ID, because sometimes the Marines can come in and save you. So that's what I say to folks. So say a man or a woman's screaming from inside their house, and they're saying, hey, Mr. Policeman, come in here and save me. It's basically calling in the Marines. And the Marines are going to come in, they're going to grab you, they're going to drag you out of Syria, and you're going to say, okay, fine. Now, can they press charges on somebody in Syria? No. All they're going to do is advise you not to go back into Syria. Say, you know what, the Marines don't want to have to come in and rescue all your time. So if you want to be in Syria, that's totally up to you. But will you please stop calling the U.S. Marines in to save you every time you get in trouble? So the same thing like with a woman or a man going back home. It's like, would you please stop calling the cops to come and rescue you? You got it out of the house safely. Now, you know what? There's really nothing we could do to the people inside of that house because they're not under our domestic authority. We saved you because you're a U.S. citizen, or you're a state citizen, or you're a citizen of our town, or whatever. We came and saved you. But honestly, we don't want to be bothered with this nonsense. So can you please just stop doing what you're doing? And that's the way it always used to roll. And they'd say, well, back there in the 60s and 70s and 80s, that the husband and wives be screaming up and down, oh, nobody cares, we're getting our asses kicked in our homes, blah, blah, blah. We got to pass laws to protect us. The police back in the 70s, they'd say, hey, you know what? We can't tell that man what to do in his house. We have no authority. If you want to go back home to him, that's your problem. He does, if you want to go back there, what he wants to do. And see, somehow, something happened in the 80s or 90s or 2000s, where all of a sudden, somebody thought they were going to say, whether, create some sort of a code and say, well, now we have domestic authority over people's domestic affairs within their homes, within their domiciles, within their domestic authority. And somehow, none of you people ever just said, hey, wait, says who? Since when? Just because you guys write a code? That doesn't have anything to do. Just because Hillary Clinton writes a code and says we have the right to go into Syria and do whatever we want, the Syrians are still going to say you're crazy. We don't care what code you write. You're outside of your domestic authority. Go back to wherever you came from, but you have no rights and no controls over anything that's going on, or in my affairs that are going on in my domicile of my nation, in my country, under my domestic authority. Have a nice day. So that's why I say, that's why the police have power over you. And because domestic doesn't just mean a house, it can mean a nation or a country. And these folks have been assigned to do the public venue. Once you step outside of your threshold, out of your home, you're in public venue. You're one of the public at large. And at large just means like being in a jungle. You're just running around doing whatever you want to do. You're the public at large. Just like the bank robber is still at large. That means the bank robber's not been captured. The bank robber's still running around doing whatever the hell he pleases, that he still might pose a danger. So the bank robber's still at large. So you're one of the public at large. So that's why the police look at you no different than they look at a bank robber who's at large, the public at large. And they have to basically control them to maintain a certain domestic tranquility. So that's all Dad is doing when he's in his house. He's trying to contain a certain domestic tranquility. So he has the right to basically do whatever he wants, as long as it's not deadly. But other than that, he's good to go. And I just gave you guys where you can find that encouragers and gun amount of assault and battery and domestic stuff, and I pulled it right out of the dictionary from 2004. So even in 2004, they still believe there's something called domestic authority. But just because they started writing new laws, what you guys call laws, in 1980 or 1990, thinking that, oh, well, now they can come in our house, and oh, when we open a door, now what, you tell me Syria has to have a wall 10 feet high in the door around the whole entire country? Well, if they say, well, the Marines said, well, gee, you didn't have a fence. Gee, you didn't have a door. Gee, we were just hanging out in Jordan. Next thing we knew, we were in Syria. We saw you guys doing something wrong. So, gee, we just took all your guns and weapons. Gee, I guess you should have put up a door or no trespassing sign. That's ridiculous. They know they have no authority. They know they have no right to do what they're doing by crossing into somebody else's domestic affairs. So, like I said, people say, oh, domestic. Well, I just explained to you. Domestic means nation, country, or a house. So, that helps a little bit. I hope to see where I'm going with this gun thing. When they're saying that you challenge the right to enter into your domestic affairs and that you can interpret the laws under your domestic authority or what's under your control at all times. That they were guests. You know, there were guests at the home, and guests, if you, Dan was on the phone, he'd tell you what guest means. In Latin, it means hostile. Like a host brings you in.
Right.
Oh, yeah, there's Dan. Dan's on the call, huh?
Yeah, I'm on, man. Are you talking to my partner?
Yep, so you just explained how a guest
Yeah.
is actually a hostile entity inside your domestic, inside your domicile. And he's supposed to be feared, and honestly, you do whatever's necessary and proper to get that guest the hell out.
Right.
So, when he's a guest in your home, he has to act accordingly, or you have the right to do whatever you want to vanquish your guest. Because he's perceived to be an enemy, because he does not know the code that flows in your house. He does not know the law of your home. And if he trespasses, and you give him fair warning to stop the trespass, you have every right to do whatever you think is necessary and proper to maintain tranquility in your home. Anything up until leading to non-deadly force. As long as you don't kill a guy, you can do whatever you want. And that pretty well is established as rule of law all over the world. You know, like what he's doing, basically throw him over the castle wall, say, get out of here. Don't come back. You're not welcome anymore. But you don't kill him. I'm not saying go in there and shoot him with a bazooka, man. I'm just saying, hey, get him out. Come stay out. Because, like I say to people, if you let them listen to the show, and Malcolm should have told you, and I certainly know Dan knows, if they come into your home, they better have a warrant. Because a warrant with a bond attached to it. Yeah, or at least they better have a bond. Because they come into your home, and when they're in your home, and they knock over your $1 million chandelier, or shatter your priceless Ming vase from the 8th century, that somebody's going to pay for that damage. So when they come in with a warrant, that warrant better be backed with a bond, because you're going to claim the bond for any wrong they do. So just because they have a warrant, like I used to say, oh, warrants. Oh, they're knocking on the door, say, oh, warrant. Oh, yeah, I love warrants. You got a warrant for me? No, I got one. He says, oh, great. Where's the bond? And they go, what bond? This is the bond. The bond is supposed to be attached to a warrant. Where's the bond? Says, we don't have one. Well, walk back to go get one. Then bring back the warrant and give it to me. I'll be glad to accept the warrant and the bond. Then execute whatever the hell you want to execute. I don't care. But come back with that bond. They're like, well, I guess we'll go get it, I guess, if you want it. I said, of course I do. And then I pulled out a box of matches from my pocket, and I said to the sheriff, the deputy guy here, and when you come back with the bond, burn that house down to the ground. Because you come back with $1 million bond, I'm claiming the whole $1 million, whether or not you break anything in the house or not. I'm claiming that you did do some damage. So you might as well have some fun and burn it down to the ground, because I'm claiming every damn all equity in that bond that you represent me. You ain't leaving the bond. I'm going to cash that bond in. So come back with $1 million bond. You're more welcome. Come on in. It's like renting out a dance hall for a reception for a wedding. You got to put up a bond just in case you guys do some crazy damage to the dance hall. You got to put up a bond. We're not just going to let you crazy bastards come here and burn the place down to the ground. You want to burn it down to the ground? Give us a bond and burn it down to the ground. Then do your pyrotechnics, do whatever you want during this wedding reception. I don't care. Burn it down to the ground. I got a bond. Give it up. Do whatever you want.